Honorable Deputy Prime Minister, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to especially and once again thank you for your steady hand in guiding us all on the acceptable standards of parliamentary decorum and dignity. Yours, Mr. Speaker, is not an easy task as you preside over hours of deliberations and provide wise counsel in the process to keep us on the straight and narrow. But, Honourable Speaker, we can all agree, however we agree or disagree with each other, your calm hand is on the gavel, and we appreciate that, and we are grateful for that. Mr. Speaker, let me start by saying there are two Hindi sayings that I will use to describe the budget contribution from the opposition. But before that, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Honourable Prime Minister. I know Honourable Naivalarua yesterday asked the question, is the Prime Minister happy with the budget? Let me tell him, the Prime Minister did not appoint me to please him or to make him happy. The Prime Minister appointed me and leads his government to provide economic prosperity, give freedom and stability to this country. And in the last 6 months, Mr. Speaker, he has shown the country and the people of this country know that he is not only a compassionate but a gracious leader and one who is determined to provide that steady leadership. Mr. Speaker, the more I listen to the debate, and I want to thank all the honourable members for their contribution. I especially want to thank my colleagues on this side, the honourable ministers and assistant ministers, because what they have done, Mr. Speaker, they have not only made my task easy, but they have also, in their own wisdom, understanding, wrote their speeches, studied the budget, and in the process have made excellent contribution and debunked most of what came from the opposition. Mr. Speaker, I know there are number of things that the opposition was expecting from the budget, because it comes, and it came out very clearly, as I predicted, very clearly, because it comes out of what they were saying before the election and what they said after they lost the election and what they've been saying for the last 6 months. So they were saying during the election campaign, oh, if Sitibeni Rambuka and Biman Prasad and Sodalpa, if they come into government, they'll take away your social welfare. They will take away free school. They will bring a scholarship that will discriminate you. They will ruin the economy. In fact, some of them were, when the negotiations were going on, Mr. Speaker, to form the government, there were some who were calling people and saying, Siti Beni Rambuka will ruin the economy. And, Mr. Speaker, in the last 6 months, they have gone around the country, and we know. And we have seen this. And so their expectation of this budget was that suddenly Biman Prasad, as Minister of Finance, is going to come to Parliament and announce that, we are cutting social welfare, that we are taking away tuition fees for students, that there will be a very hard budget. But when the budget was delivered, and Mr. Speaker, when I was delivering my budget, I actually looked at the colleagues on the other side. When I began, they were pretty straight. But by the time I finished, they were disappointed. They were disappointed. And there is a good Hindi saying, Honorable Speaker, good Hindi saying. It says, Kisyan billi khamba noche.
Order.
Figuratively translated, metaphorically translated, it means embarrassed or ashamed person to bend his or her feeling by quarreling. And that's what they've done. All they've done, Mr. Speaker, over the last 2 days is to quarrel about what they did and what they did over the last 10 to 15 years. The other Hindi saying that is very apt to describe what they have been saying in their budget contribution is this, Mr. Speaker. It goes like this: Ulta chor kotwal ke date. It's like figuratively, it likes the thieves telling the guards, oh, don't do this. This is a government, Mr. Speaker. This is a government, Mr. Speaker, which inherited the mess, which inherited the looters. We are still finding every day, Mr. Speaker, as Honorable Deputy Prime Minister Kumkumida said. I just found out last week, another 16 million to the Stabilization Fund. There is a claim from MWH. And he, Mr. Speaker, in his contribution, Minister for Infrastructure, he didn't say a word about FRA. And he presided over the worst management of infrastructure after spending $3.1 billion. Look at the state of the road, the state of the bridges today. He didn't talk about that deliberately. He was dancing all over the place, But he didn't talk about FRA. So, Mr. Speaker, I also want to put my colleagues at ease, because if I did the microwave that they talk about, I will talk for about 3 hours in my right of reply, Mr. Speaker. I don't intend to do that. But I want to, Mr. Speaker, say this. I know they don't like this because they have still, you can see what they're saying. They still haven't got into those chairs and relaxed themselves, that they are now actually in the opposition. So what what we had over the last 2 or 3 days is Fiji Face did that, Fiji Face did this is what you inherited, and that's all they could say, Mr. Speaker, because they were totally taken aback at the way in which we have come out and crafted this budget, and they are also worried that this budget had overwhelming support so far, Mr. Speaker. One of them criticized that the NGOs, Honorable Kumar said, oh, why is Consumer Council supporting the budget? It's an organization. The Fiji Council of Social Services supported the business community, the Employers Federation, the international donors, partners, they've all supported the budget because they know, honestly, Mr. Speaker, that this is a budget which is not only physically prudent, and my colleague, Honorable Minister for Lands, just now debunked all that they were saying. All that they were saying about debt. Yeah. Let me get back to. Let me just because one of the things that they kept saying was, debt went because of COVID. Oh, we looked after our people. That's why we had to borrow. But Mr. Speaker, before the 2018 election, they actually produced a fake budget. Yeah, it was a fake budget, Mr. Speaker, where, and I remember being in Parliament at that time, on the opposition side, they presented a budget where they cooked the numbers, and Honorable Basarongo is absolutely right. They tried to show to the people before the election that this was the expenditure. But there was a whopping $1 billion hole, Mr. Speaker. They produced a budget, they forecast a revenue, but the money was never there. And Mr. Speaker, after having done that, the result was so close that when we challenged the result, they hid in level 9. They hid in level 9 for 2 days. And we were looking for them. And that, Mr. Speaker, created so much uncertainty and instability, and created a situation where people, the investors, were really worried. And what happened in 2019, Mr. Speaker, before COVID hit us? Our economy actually contracted by negative 1.9%. The economy contracted, Mr. Speaker. In fact, COVID saved them a little bit, but couldn't save them fully. That's why they're sitting on the other side. So what happened, Mr. Speaker? By 2019, the economy was grinding to a halt. There was negative growth. And when COVID hit us, we went deeper into the hole, Mr. Speaker. And what happened was they only talk about borrowing. Yes, we had concessional financing, World Bank, ADB. These organizations looked at many other countries. But what was defining for Fiji, Mr. Speaker, was this. We had the 4th highest contraction in our economy in the world. And the reason was what happened in 2018 and 2019. So when we got into 2022, of course, we were recovering from a 17% contraction, and they talk about the economic growth. They also, not one of them, acknowledged the fact that when COVID hit us, Mr. Speaker, all our international partners and donors knew. They knew that the government had nothing. in its coffers. So we had Australia, we had New Zealand, we had World Bank, we had ADB, we had all kinds of support, not only in terms of direct budget support, but also medical consumables, vaccines. These were all provided to Fiji in a way that was unprecedented. So none of them acknowledged that. They were all in government. Not one of them, Mr. Speaker, not one of them acknowledged the fact that, Australia and New Zealand came to our rescue. Yeah.
Order.
They were taking credit. They went into the election in 2022 taking credit that they looked after the people. But our people, Mr. Speaker, to a large extent, were looked after by international partners, donors, lenders, which provided concessional loans. The other, Mr. Speaker, I sat in the opposition with you, say, for 8 years. And I've never had this kind of convoluted, confused, contradictory contribution from the opposition. So let me just explain the contradictions. So on one hand, they all seem to have said, oh, this is the biggest expenditure budget. Oh, you have to borrow more. You are spending more. Then on the other side, they say, oh, no, you're not giving enough. Our people are going to suffer. This is not the budget for the poor, this is the budget for the rich. Then they're saying, oh, why are you increasing company tax to 25%? Because this is going. Mr. Speaker, I don't know what they want. What sort of economic logic? I mean, you got to be logical. If you say you are raising company tax, and then you are saying you are not giving enough, I don't know what they're talking about. It's very hard. It's very hard to be able to sort of respond to this kind of. That's why, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to keep it short, because a lot of the things that they said is not worth responding, because the people of this country, the people of this country, Mr. Speaker, understand, and that's why they are so worried. They seem to be carrying on. I know it's coming from, some of the speeches is coming from pen of a man who, reasons no one has explained, managed to kick himself out of the house in January soon after having been elected. But Mr. Speaker, when we offered, what's the point of order?
Why do you want to attack somebody who is not here? If you want to talk about somebody, talk about us here. Leaders here are party leaders outside. You want to talk about somebody here.
Yeah. In fact, Mr. Speaker, that's a bit of a hogwash, because they actually they don't understand. And let me, in fact, I thank Honorable Usumate because he's given me some points to raise. This is a group, and in fact, it's quite embarrassing, Mr. Speaker, and I was very disappointed. I mean, there was one opportunity for the honorable members on the other side to break loose from the dictatorship that they were cloaked in for many years. And yet, they come into this parliament and they don't recognize the leader. And they praise the leaders, Yeah, they're referring to both of them outside.
Section 81, response to misrepresentation. I would like to clarify this.
Standing Order 81.
81. I want to clarify this. He's been talking about the leader. We had made reference in our speech, and you may like to look at the Hansard. I've made reference to Frank Bainimarama as the former leader who did not eat the plane or... No, I'm clarifying. Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm clarifying the statement I made. And that statement was made in relation to the leader who was here then. Right? Not in relation to this leader. We have got exactly two. You should never be confused, Mr. Speaker, sir. Sodelpa also had two leaders. One was the party leader, the other one was the leader who was sitting here. So you should know better. So that's the clarification I want to give. And it's up to us as a party. We want to call whoever a leader, we'll do it. But I just want to clarify that my statement was in relation to the former leader. And I want to clarify that for your record. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
In this parliament, Honorable Kumar should know that the Honorable Leader of the Opposition is a leader. But Mr. Speaker, the other point that I want to respond to, which has been made by Honorable Napoto today, they, right from the first session of Parliament, obviously they've talked about how the coalition government is not following the Constitution, how there is constitutional process being bypassed. In fact, Mr. Speaker, when we were in opposition, we were constantly reminded. I mean, the General Secretary is a lawyer. He was a drafter of the Constitution. He knows the Constitution. Honorable Koya knows this. If at any time anybody, including the opposition, feels that the Constitution is not being followed, take it to the court. Take it to the court. That's what they should do. They haven't, Mr. Speaker, filed any case, any breach of Constitution by this government, but they keep talking about it. Because, and they talk about stability, they talk about creating confidence, yet these are the very people, who create this. So, Mr. Speaker, it is absolutely important for us as a government to be able to understand, what the opposition has been saying, and this is an opportunity for us to respond. The other syndrome that I think the opposition reply kind of signified, Mr. Speaker, is what I call the Stockholm syndrome. There seems to be, it's a psychological syndrome when people remain captured. When it's like it's an old syndrome, where you're looking at a prisoner and the captor. And what I heard from the opposition over the last 2 or 3 days, when they talked about the microwave budget, when they talked about, what the former leaders were doing, they don't seem to be getting out there. There's so much captivity there. They were so afraid. I think that a lot of them are still afraid. Even the new ones, who've joined are afraid. People outside. And let me, and she was trying to explain the party's, structure. Fiji First Party is like a company. It has only 2 shareholders, and both of them are out. They're all kind of employees. They're all, Honorable Speaker, they're all employees of a company in which there are only 2 shareholders, because those are constitutionally, their constitution allows only 2 people to become the leader. That's why they're probably referring him to the leader. In fact, I don't know, Mr. Speaker, in fact, I don't know how the constitution was accepted and how they were registered as a political party. So, Mr. Speaker, the other point that they made was, the other point that they've been making, that this is a big spending budget. It's certainly bigger than what I would have preferred, Mr. Speaker, personally, but the spending that we are engaged in is now all the catch-up spending that has been necessary for years. If you have listened to our honourable ministers on the government side, the constant theme that has come through is the maintenance of facilities. And we know, every minister on this side knows the pathetic state of our facilities. So that is what I mean by the substance, Mr. Speaker. The previous government, and as we just pointed out, I pointed out, Honorable Basarongo pointed out, they were putting out budgets in which there was not enough revenue. So they were telling the people that they were going to do this, fix that, but nothing was being done. So I want to remind the opposition also, Mr. Speaker, about the findings of the Fiscal Review Committee. That instead of spending $5 on maintenance for every dollar of capital expenditure, the previous government spent only 20 cents on every dollar of capital expenditure. The previous government built shiny new things for ministers to open and give speeches. Then after the cameras were gone, you would forget about them. Whether you talk about Lambasa campus, whether you talk about, Navua Hospital, how it was done, whether you talk about the moving of equipment from Bar to Navosa just for the opening, all for sure, Mr. Speaker. The government's asset maintenance model has been described as build, deteriorate and rebuild. That is the sort of mismanagement that has to be turned around, Mr. Speaker, and that's why we told them that $200 million is allocated towards maintenance. And that's expenditure. A lot of it will be capital work. A lot of jobs will be created. Small contractors would be able to take advantage of that. Mr. Speaker, what we are also doing is, through this budget, is to fix the system. We've had to step in, Mr. Speaker, and fix with millions simply to ensure that they receive some additional reward for the work that they do. Teachers were similarly ignored for many years with no annual appraisals carried out. Once again, Mr. Speaker, they were just pretending. It was a government that was pretending. And we have been left with a mess. So they talk about a big spending budget, but they haven't talked about what we need to do now as a government. So there are things that went into that, microwave that they talk about that will never be back there again. So they talked about a microwave budget, but it was an analogy that describes themselves, Mr. Speaker, because in the microwave they tried to put instant noodles. It smelled like noodles, but when the people actually went and tried to get out the substance, there was nothing there. That's the microwave budget that they talk about. So this is a budget that is spending the money. We need to bring the government back to doing real things and not just pretending it. Mr. Speaker, the people know what is the situation with the bet. And I think Honorable Basarongo covered that very well. The 15% bet, Mr. Speaker, is not a new thing. They had 15% bet from 2011 to 2015. And there were only 6 items which were zero rated. So obviously, Mr. Speaker, 15%, and the arguments that I heard from them today, and yesterday as well, that this is going to burden the people. But when they were presiding on 15% bet, they didn't worry about it. So, Mr. Speaker, this obsession now of more debt and more spending, Mr. Speaker, is all hogwash. They know that it was the obsession of the Fiji First government and the false belief that we can continue to borrow more and live beyond our means that led to our debt problem that we have inherited. So the Dinao syndrome, and I'm surprised, Mr. Speaker, that the opposition members are so brainwashed. They still tend to believe that there was nothing wrong with them increasing the debt from $2.7 billion to a staggering $10 billion, similar to the Stockholm syndrome. So, independent reports, Mr. Speaker, had a very clear message on the fiscal direction, and I want to repeat some of those because it's important. When we came into government, we had 3 independent reports: the World Bank's Public Expenditure Report, the International Monetary Fund's Article 4 reports, and the Independent Fiscal Review Committee report. All these reports clearly pointed out 3 key facts. Firstly, Fiji was headed towards a fiscal disaster if we did not embark on an immediate path of fiscal consolidation, which, Mr. Speaker, we have begun with this budget. Second, a credible and meaningful fiscal consolidation was not possible without addressing the revenue side of the budget, because the ill-thought tax cuts and large tax giveaways by the delusional Fiji First government had deprived the nation billions of dollars. Thirdly, these deep-rooted fiscal problems did not start, as I said, during COVID, Mr. Speaker. In fact, it started in 2014, when the then Minister for Economy, what I call, started his experimental economics to increase spending without raising sufficient taxes. So I just want to remind the opposition that their hypocrisy, Mr. Speaker, as I already said, can be aptly described by the Hindi saying, ulta chor kotwal ke date. This is the hypocrisy that's coming from the other side. And Honorable Basarongo, again, I don't want to go into that. Higher expenditure, Fiji First ran higher expenditure than ours. They actually lied, Mr. Speaker, on the other side. If you look at the budget, if you look at Fiji First government's 2017-2018 budget, had a planned expenditure of 4.4 billion. And the 2018-2019 budget had allocated 4.7 billion. That's much higher than this budget, Mr. Speaker. And that's not during COVID. That's not during COVID. 2017-18 budget had a planned expenditure of 4.4 billion. And 2018 and 2019, this is well before COVID, budget had allocated 4.7. So they were all lying. They said, our expenditure was, this is the highest expenditure. The major problem with those 2 budgets was that it was based on an extremely unrealistic and fake revenue target with a revenue gap. The figures don't lie. So the budget whole was $1 billion in expenditure promises because there was no money. So, Mr. Speaker, what we did when we came into government, as I said earlier, we started fixing the leak. And there is another analogy here, Mr. Speaker, which I want to talk about. When you take over a sinking boat, the best way to save that boat from sinking is to first fix the leak. So when we came into government, and we are still finding those leaks,
Yes.
we are still trying to fix that.
Correct.
And there would be millions of dollars that would be needed to not only stop the leakage, but also compensate what has been leaked out and what this government will have to pay. Mr. Speaker, they were again confused. Honorable Usimate was completely confused. On one hand, he talked about the nominal debt, then he talked about debt to GDP ratio, but he knows that this budget has actually arrested the key indicator of fiscal prudence, and that's debt to GDP ratio. And it's now on a manageable target, it's on a manageable track. So let's look at the $4.3 billion expenditure, Mr. Speaker. Let's dissect it a little bit. So the budgeted expenditure of $4.3 billion has to be carefully dissected, and we talked about it. So I just wanted to repeat because they don't seem to understand this, or they are deliberately misleading the people. If we look at the $4.3 billion expenditure, that includes $346 million in VAT expenditure, sir, that government has to pay when we produce goods and services. We also have to pay VAT on all our expenditures. So that's an additional expenditure as a result of our tax policy. Pensions, salaries, interest payments. So we had to increase the VAT from 9 to 15%, and government's VAT expenditure, sir, have also increased from 188 million to 346 million, an increase of 160 million. So that's, in a way, explains some of the additional expenditure. Then we have some of the additional expenditures in terms of paying the debt or the dues that, for example, USP grant. Let me debunk another myth that there is nothing new in this budget, because that was the theme that was coming from the other side. If they think that forgiving $650 million TELS debt is not new, then I don't know what is. If they think that lifting the burden on 53,000 students, their families, their guardians, if that is not new, I don't know what it is. Is an increasing social welfare budget to over $200 million new? Isn't the increase of 15% in monthly social welfare allowance and 25% increase for those above 70 years not new? Our concentration on the budget for the Ministry of Youth OK Affairs and for the empowerment of the Youth OK community, is that not new, Mr. Speaker? So there are a number of features there, Mr. Speaker, that they can't see, and obviously they seem to underestimate what's in the budget. Let me move on to some of the tax measures, because that's where they've been totally confused. On one hand, they're saying, why are you increasing the VAT? Then on the other hand, they're saying, why are you increasing the company tax? Then they're saying, oh, this is a pro-rich budget. They talk about company tax, and in the same breath, they say this is a pro-rich budget. I'll come to that. The opposition seems to also claim that increase in taxes will harm economic recovery and growth. I don't know where they're coming from. As an economist, Mr. Speaker, I can't see what they're saying, that these budgetary measures is going to harm the economy. Firstly, Mr. Speaker, we don't take these measures now, the impact on the economy would be worse and would have been unavoidable under the previous trajectory, irresponsibly orchestrated by the previous government. So by maintaining macroeconomic and macro-fiscal sustainability, Mr. Speaker, in this budget, we are sending a very strong signal to the economic players, investors. In fact, the investors are very, very pleased, Mr. Speaker, because when you look at the private sector, I don't know, maybe he's suffering from something, Mr. Speaker. It's just, in my ears, it's completely, I get distracted, He appears to be a complete nuisance.
Continue.
Anyway, Mr. Speaker, so what the fiscal prudence in the budget has given more confidence to the private sector. So I don't know where they're coming from with respect to that there is no confidence. They should also note, Mr. Speaker, that as I said in my budget address, we want to bring certainty, we want to bring consistency, and we want no surprises, and the business community wants that. So for departure tax increases, it's gradual. Used to be 200 2 years ago, and we have now only increased it to $125 from 1st August and to $140 from 1st January 2024. So it's still below what it used to be. Same for corporate taxes, which used to be over 30%, and now we are only increasing it to, used to be 20%, now we are just increasing it to 25%. VAT used to be 15% with only 60 items, now we have 22 VAT-free items. And it is important to note that we are not bringing taxes like EKL, STT. So this argument that it will hurt the tourism industry, we've had good discussion with the tourism industry, and the tourism industry
Point of
players
order, Mr. Speaker, sir. I think his statement needs to be corrected immediately. He's misleading the parliament because he's saying that only 6 items were under zero VAT. But in fact, 21 items were zero VAT. Check your speech. Your speech says 21, and then you said you're adding one more. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
I think she's, the Honourable Kumar is overly excited by the arguments. What I said, Mr. Speaker, very clearly, VAT used to be 15% with only 6 zero-rated items. VAT used to be 15% with only 6 zero. That was from 2011 and 2016. She didn't hear it properly. But now we have 22 VAT-free items. It is important to note that we are not bringing EKL and STT. Mr. Speaker, there's been a lot of talk about water tax issue and the SRT reduction, and many of them, all their contributions. I thought, in fact, I sent my permanent secretary and officials to have a briefing for parliamentary members. Of course, they invited others. But all these things were explained to them, but they still ignored them. So let me just correct this. I want to, Mr. Speaker, touch on the criticism both inside this House and outside of the House, of how the government has restructured the taxation of bottled water companies. The opposition has tried in this House to say that there is something sinister. They have come up with this conspiracy theory in all this. And I know the ever-present ghost of someone that they rely on has made similar noises. The General Secretary, Yahya Sayyid Qayyum, made similar noises, outside of Parliament. And also the Labour Party leader. They're all suggesting that because the government exempted water bottling companies from income tax, the government is giving away millions of dollars in lost revenue. Mr. Speaker, let us remember that this is from the same government that they were in, that passed a special law, to free certain special people from the obligation to pay capital gains tax. And even though, Mr. Speaker, we have now reversed the law, this special law that they made for special people cost the taxpayers of Fiji $70 million, Mr. Speaker. $70 million. And others rush through the loophole. That's an example of a corrupt law. Let me go back to the water tax. And let me say this clearly for everyone's benefit, inside and outside this house. The restructuring of taxes on bottled water companies will cost the Fiji government nothing. Instead, it is projected to produce more tax revenue in the coming financial year, not less. Mr. Speaker, why is this? People may ask how we end up working with the bottled water industry to take more taxes from them than before. Important question. The answer is very simple, and they should listen to this. We were approached by the bottled water industry, not Fiji Water, bottled water industry. But the industry as a whole, they asked that the coalition government restructure the taxation of the industry so that foreign owners could claim a tax credit in their home countries, Mr. Speaker said, for the tax they paid in Fiji. Let us remember, Mr. Speaker, that the water resource tax that Fiji charges is also the highest in the world. In this financial year, we expect to collect more than $80 million from water resource tax alone. Most of this water resource tax is, of course, collected from one industry player, Fiji Water, which is foreign owned. The industry proposal was to make the income of the bottled water businesses tax-free. The corporate tax that the government receives from the water bottlers is almost 20 times less than the water tax. But even then, we do not want to lose that tax, even though it's 20 times less. And that is why the bottled water industry proposed that we increase the water resource tax to make up for the lost corporate tax. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, the higher rate of water resource tax has been increased from 18 cents to 19.5 cents a litre to recover any income tax that has been lost. As a result of this proposal, Mr. Speaker said, everybody wins. The government collects more revenue, not less. Government collects more revenue, not less. The industry participants receive the foreign tax credits where they are available. And the industry continues to grow, meaning significantly more water resource tax in the coming years. We expect this to rise to more than $100 million in the 2024-2025 financial year. So it is completely, therefore, false, malicious for people like Mahendrapal Chaudhary to claim, as he did last week, that Fiji will lose hundreds of millions of dollars in tax. The government will lose nothing. The government will, in fact, Mr. Speaker, collect more tax. And let us not forget, Mr. Speaker, that it was while Mr. Chaudhary was finance minister in the military government back in 2008 that the government tried to block exports of Fiji water to force Fiji Water to pay more tax. That move was a clumsy, short-sighted piece of attempted blackmail.
Mr. Speaker, Sir, relevance. Last time I spoke about the VC. I'm speaking to the Speaker. Wait. 74, Mr. Speaker, sir. Last time I spoke about the USP-VC, the Honourable Member raised the point of order. And he said, those who are not present here, we should not be speaking about them. He's referring to the former Prime Minister and former Minister for Finance, Mahendrapal Chaudhary, who is not here to defend himself. So let's not bring other people who are not present here. Also speaking about our General Secretary who is not present here, Mr. Speaker. So at least you can show some respect to our leaders. Thank you.
Ketan.
Is getting more confused, Mr. Speaker. That's in relation to water tax I'm talking about, because I have to respond to that as part of my. So, in fact, that decision damaged Fiji's reputation for foreign investment in a big way, and I think they know that. The other one, Mr. Speaker, that they talked about quite forcefully is the social responsibility tax, which they kind of spin as a pro-rich policy, and how we've restructured it. What we have done here, Mr. Speaker, is to simplify and streamline the overly complicated personal income tax regime and made it slightly fair. So we have now basically, what we have done is, Mr. Speaker, they can't just listen, I mean, it's just so annoying, So we have now basically merged the PAYE and SRT together in a single tax table with a 5% reduction in SRT across the board, as it was unfairly high and targeted a small group of lawyers and accountants by the previous government. Again, it was made to punish some people. This is a history, there is a history, Mr. Speaker, and let me explain. When the previous government That's a good one. There is a history, Mr. Enling. When the previous government introduced SRT, they got it fundamentally wrong. The SRT was applied on full income, Mr. Speaker, rather than marginal income. Because any good taxation system, for it to be progressive, you should look at the marginal tax rate. So they applied on full income rather than the marginal income on additional income, which should be the case to make the tax system progressive. So by that foolish change, Mr. Speaker, we had hundreds of taxpayers earning gross income of over 270,000, having a lower net take-home pay compared to those earning below them. You don't have that anywhere in the world. So if you're earning 270 and above, after the SRT, your take-home pay would actually be lower than somebody who's earning 200,000 or whatever the number is there. That's how absurd the system was, the rate was. So after the complaints, the government recognized this stupidity, and we've reversed the policy to apply the SRT not on full income, but only, Mr. Speaker, say on marginal income, which is the incremental income or additional income above 270,000. This means that the anomaly I highlighted earlier was eliminated. However, while this anomaly was sorted, there was another major problem because the corporate tax rate was set at 20%, and what happened when this SRT came in, the PAY and SRT combined was much higher, in fact, maximum of 49% then. We had hundreds of people escaping SRT. So those who were directors were receiving salaries, they escaped SRT by forming companies or paying the reduced tax rate of 20% and taking tax-free dividends. So in fact, because there was no progressivity, we were losing income. The only group left paying SRT in that case were the lawyers and the accountants who, by the virtue of law, could not form companies, Mr. Speaker. And that was why it was done, because it was targeted. It was a very unfair. So what we've done is to make it more fairer, make it more progressive. Nothing, which suggests that, we are favoring the rich, Mr. Speaker. So, this is the kind of uninformed debate that we've had from the opposition in the last 2 days, Mr. Speaker. A couple of other things that I wanted to quickly point out, they talked about, Honorable Napoto talked about drug problem. And he was talking about police in this budget. As the Honorable Minister explained, we provided additional funding for police patrol, police beat. We know drug is a problem. And let me just remind some of them, especially Honorable Usumate, because he seems to completely ignore that. Honorable Pio Tikundundua, while in opposition, 2 years ago or 3 years ago, moved a motion in this very parliament, Mr. Speaker, to have a national inquiry on the drug problem. And what happened? He was assaulted by the then Prime Minister and chucked out of Parliament, and all of them were sitting there, gulping the injustice that was done to this man because he raised an important issue. So we know there is a serious drug problem in this country, and we have already the minister has laid down what he needs to do. So, Mr. Speaker, this is the level of debate that we heard from the opposition. One thing that I want to, Mr. Speaker, I think I've gone. I wanted to finish it in an hour, but I've gone. If I followed the microwave, I would have gone for 3 hours. But this is, as has been said by my honourable colleagues on this side, Mr. Speaker, this budget has fundamentally put the country back on track. We have, since we've come into government, there is a sense of freedom, there is a sense of optimism, there is a sense of exuberance within the country. You can look at all the indicators. You look at the indicators with respect to tourism numbers. You look at the spending. You look at the expectations, of the investors. Honorable Deputy Prime Minister Kamkamida talked about the pipeline. The banks are telling us that the uptake on loans, borrowings by the private sector is very buoyant. And so all the indicators that are there shows that our economy was on the right trajectory. And what this budget has done, Mr. Speaker, is to create a fine balance to looking after our people, making sure that our spending on health, education, and infrastructure and social welfare is adequate. And that, Mr. Speaker, brings the budget into focus. One last point that I wanted to discuss, because a lot of misinformation has also come from the other side. They deliberately, Mr. Speaker, when they talked about TEL's forgiveness, they deliberately forgot, or they deliberately manipulated the narrative, or tried to manipulate the narrative. But I'm pretty sure, Mr. Speaker, that's not going to work, because the young people are celebrating. University students are celebrating. High school students are celebrating. They know what this government has done. They understand what it means. So they are equating. They're saying, oh, you have replaced loan repayment with bond, so there is no change. Mr. Speaker, how naive they can be. Bond, Mr. Speaker, is about people, students saving our country. We did that. I studied on a scholarship, and I signed a bond for 4 years, for which the scholarship duration was, to save the country. And if I didn't, I had to pay. You don't equate a bond. You don't equate a bond with a loan that you have to pay. It's not cash. And Mr. Speaker, they're talking about, all this misinformation that government has lost its revenue. They don't understand a simple thing. It's when the government gives loan, it's an expenditure. It's supposed to be a revolving fund. It's supposed to be paid. But as we pointed out, Mr. Speaker, in many ways, that loan was already forgiven. And we pointed out 21,000 students, told us 21,000 students who they paid. They spent close to about $150 to $190 million.
Yes, sir. The point is that that money was never forgiven. Students had to pay the loan, but for the last 3 years, because of COVID and all, they were given a break. And as soon as the economy improves, they were supposed to pay back. Right? So that was the formula. And again, Mr. Speaker, sir, he's been misleading the House simply by saying there is so much of excitement and all that. But he fails to understand, as an economy minister, managing finances, finance minister, also looking after the growth of the economy, he should understand better that this is not a sustainable model, which means that we all have to pay that amount of money every year, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, Honorable Kumar and I published an article together. Mr. Speaker, I think Honorable Kumar is more confused. What I was simply saying is that the 21,000 students who took loans doesn't even have the record of those people. So that money that was spent on 21,000 students is dead money already. And the rate at which the collection was coming, I'm not talking about the forgiveness during COVID. She's misinterpreting what I'm saying. I'm just saying, Mr. Speaker, that what we have crafted as part of the new scholarship is a real, well thought out strategy to ensure that we produce a labor market requirement that is commensurate with what the economy needs, what are the human resource needs. There will be proper planning. Students will be put into different skill areas, different subject areas, different professional programs, and there will be both equity and access to scholarships. Government was not collecting the money anyway. So what we have done, Mr. Speaker, is we are forgiving all that was there. Some students have a small percentage would have paid everything. That's fine, we can't go back. But for those who still owe, all their loan agreement will be converted into bond agreement. If they've saved like 4 years and they're left with 1.5 years, the bond agreement will be for only 1.5 years. So it's a very good scheme, Mr. Speaker, and that will be good for the country, good for the students. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, as I said in my budget address, this may seem a tough budget, but it's a very compassionate budget. It's a well thought out budget. It brings into picture, in a particular way, fiscal prudence, and it will provide the confidence that is needed not just to the private sector, to our international partners, donors, lending agencies, and to our people. And Mr. Speaker, this is our first budget. This budget, we understand, is not going to solve every problem, given the magnitude of the problem that we have. So we do ask the opposition and our people understand this already. But we have to make sure that the opposition understands this, that we need patience. We have to make sure that what we have provided for in this budget, our ministers understand this very well. We are strengthening our planning office within the Ministry of Finance. Our monitoring and evaluation will be much stronger, much more focused, so that we are able to deliver the expenditure that has been provided for in the budget. With those words, Mr. Speaker, I want to once again thank the Honourable Prime Minister for his leadership of the Cabinet Subcommittee on the Budget, including my two colleagues, Deputy Prime Ministers Kamkamida and Gavoka, all the ministers, permanent secretaries who made very good presentations to the Ministry of Finance in the formulation of the budget. And also, I want to take this opportunity to thank my permanent secretary, Shri Gaundar, very competent, permanent secretary, and all his staff who have found the process that we used to formulate the budget seamless, much more congenial, easy, yet it gave time to everyone to think through this budget carefully. So I want to extend my gratitude and thanks to all those who worked very hard in the office to get this budget out. Also, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the people who participated in the Economic Summit, all the thousands who made written submissions, as well as the Chairman of the Fiscal Review Committee, Mr. Richard Naidu, and all the members, because they worked very hard, Mr. Speaker, in compiling the statistics, going through the details, and putting out a report, independently, which informed the country as to the state of our finances, our economic situation, and that helped not only us, but the people at large to understand how and why we've got this budget. And I want to thank all of them. With those words, Mr. Speaker, I commend this budget, and I invite the opposition to do something different, get out of that microwave, and support this budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Prime Minister Prasad, for your right of reply.